This week on the Storycraft Society, I wanted to make a super cool hill. Why? I don't know. No good reason. I just wanted to make one. So if you need a hill for your Dungeons & Dragons game or wargaming terrain or any tabletop role-playing game, this is the video for you. Let's make a cool hill. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin, and this is the Storycraft Society, where we craft terrain into our stories. And I'll be real, over the last couple of weeks, I've really been thinking in my head of this super cool hill idea. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, or you've been watching all our back catalog or whatever, you will notice that there is hill episodes that were actually episode number 4 of the Goblin Era's Ambush series, which was the first series we ever did on the channel. So you're probably wondering to yourself,
Garmin, why would you make 2 hill videos in like 6 months? Doesn't add up.
I'm getting to it, is that this is gonna be a super hill. There's gonna be cool rock molds. There's going to be cool elevation changes. I think the first hill that I made on the channel is definitely a beginner project where it's something that anybody can do. This one is gonna be one where I go above and beyond to make it, that next step up. I've got my XPS. I've got my mental picture in my head of what it's gonna look like. Nothing to do but jump into it. Let's make the coolest hill of all the hills. All right, so we're gonna start it off by me explaining kind of my mental picture here. So what I'm thinking is a couple of things. First of all, there's gonna be a rock face kind of dominating this side, and then there's going to be a path that kind of comes up here and then switchbacks up to the top. That's just gonna be like a walking path or a deer path up through the rocks. That's gonna add drama because you could have bad guys up here and you could have your good guys down here, or vice versa, and now they've gotta work their way up that path to get to each other. Super cool. Then on the other side, this is gonna be like the top of the hill here. I'm thinking there's gonna be a path that kind of comes up this way, like a cart path that's gonna come up this way and kind of work its way over. See, I don't know, it might come this direction, it might come this direction, but either way, it'll probably finish over here. And then that is going to work its way basically across the piece. The rest is all gonna be kind of sloping, undulating hill terrain with hopefully enough flat space in places that I could fit terrain and that sort of thing, maybe a house or something, up on top. That would be awesome. So next up, I'm gonna get this all cut up so that it looks more like the shape of what I'm going for. So that is gonna happen in 3, 2, 1. And there we have our basic hill terrain shape. We've got our path carved out, have all of our kind of sloping ground here. The next thing we have to do is get this all glued in place. We're just gonna use hot glue. Shouldn't take us very long to do that. And then once that is done, then we need to start pouring our rock molds and get into that mess. So hot glue, rock molds. All right, so to do our rock molds for what's gonna go here and all along that side and kind of down in here, we're gonna be using the Woodland Scenics rock molds. So these are these like silicone molds that you can pour your plaster down into. These make really, really, really good quality looking rock faces. Honestly, a lot better of a look than I can get from foam. And then the next thing that we're gonna be using is lightweight hydrocal plaster. This is also a Woodland Scenics product. I'm sure that there are lots of other things and products that people could use and probably that are cheaper as well. This is just the one that I'm used to using and the one that I have on hand. We're gonna start pouring these rock molds. That'll take us a while, and then of course they take a little bit of time to dry. So that's next. So we're gonna start this process by mixing 5 parts of the plaster to 2 parts of water. At least that's what the instructions say. I'll be completely honest, when I'm doing this, I am absolutely not trying to mix it to a specific ratio. I'm just mixing it until it gets me to a consistency that's not quite as thin as milk, but we don't want anything too thick that it doesn't run. So you want it to still have the ability to run a little bit, but you also want it to have a little bit of thickness to it. So once you've got your mixture to a consistency about like this, the next thing that you're gonna want to do is get out a spray bottle and spray the insides of your molds with a little bit of water. What that's gonna do is it's gonna allow your plaster to sit all the way to the bottom of the mold and not give you a bunch of air bubbles, which are not super fun. And then it's just as simple as taking and pouring your mixture into the mold, spreading it out so it gets nice and even. And then we're moving on. We're gonna get all the rest of these done up. So now that we're waiting for our rock molds to dry, the next thing that we have to do is get both sandpaper and our tinfoil ball all over this thing to get all of the kind of sharp and unnatural looking edges to go away. Let's go. All right, so next up on this thing, we have 3 pretty big steps. The first one is gonna be once our rock molds dry, we're going to have to take those off and start breaking them up into pieces, and we're gonna be gluing them onto all of the vertical flat surfaces all over our hill. That's gonna definitely take some time. I use hot glue. I know that there are people out there who just use a plaster mix to do it as well. For me, the hot glue is just predictable, and it works in a way that if I just put a big glob of it on there, I can just slap it on and it seems to work well for me. The next one is then we're gonna be mixing up small amounts of plaster and then going in with that plaster and filling through the gaps where the rock molds don't meet up with the foam or where 2 rock molds don't quite meet up with each other perfectly. While you're doing that, you can actually go in with a sculpting tool and recarve lines into them so that it actually makes it look like a smooth transition of rock. So that's definitely gonna take a little bit of time as well. Okay, so I just finished up getting the rocks all glued on and blended in place using plaster. Now, I have a couple of things to say about this just because I think it's really worth saying. The first thing is this is definitely the most time-consuming part of this process, and taking the time to go through and make sure that every rock is in the right place and make sure that every bit is blended appropriately, it definitely takes some time. So I don't think anybody who's working on this kind of rock mold project should get discouraged because it's taking a while, because that's just the way that it is. It does take time. The second thing, and maybe the more important thing, is this style project of putting on plaster rock molds and then blending them using plaster seems really scary. And I've done this a bunch of times on big projects, and even still, when I'm working on it now, it always, I don't know, it just has some kind of fear that it's not gonna turn out well every time I do it. This is one of those projects where all I can say is you have to trust me. Take the time. Do not decide that it looks bad until it's finished, because it is so just absolutely mind-blowing to me that I'll be working on it and I'll go, man, this looks like trash. But by the time I get the project finished and I keep my head down and just force myself to get the whole thing done, by the end I'm like, I have no idea what I was talking about. It looks great. It is a deceptively easy project that just seems like it would be really complicated. But really, it doesn't take a lot of skill. It just takes determination, focus, and a will to want to get it done. So the next thing is we're going to be gluing down our sand that's going to go over the whole thing. That's going to mimic our dirt texture. That's actually a really simple step. We're just going to put Eileen's tacky glue over the whole thing, and then we're going to do just a layer of sand. That's going to start blending things more and more together. Another huge step in the right direction. Okay, so I took it all out and I knocked all the excess sand off of it now that the glue is dry, which means that there is only one step left in getting this thing finished up in the construction phase, and that's going to be putting a base coat on it. So what we're going to be doing is using our Blackmagic Craft base coat, which is just a 50-50 mixture of black acrylic craft paint and matte Mod Podge, and we're going to be covering up everything on this except for the rocks. Now next week when we get into actually painting this thing up and doing all the flocking and the detail work, that's where I'm going to explain why we do that. But for this particular task, we want to make sure that we get as little Mod Podge onto the plaster rocks as possible. That's next, and then we'll get to some glamour shots, see where we are at the end of this video. So to close out this video, I wanted to bring out the hill that we made from the Goblin Arrows Ambush series, episode, I think it was number 4 on the channel, just so that you can get kind of an early comparison between the two. The thing that I want everyone to take away from this is that this is absolutely acceptable, totally fine. It will work great on a gaming table to represent hills for your Dungeons and Dragons or wargaming game. This is all you need. But if you want to step it up that next level, it's really not that much more effort. And I don't think it's even a one-to-one comparison yet, because this has all of the flock and the color and all that. This is still just in its base coat stages. So when this really has the opportunity to shine, it's just gonna blow up and just really wow everybody at the table. So pretty excited. Definitely can't wait till this is what this looks like, but that'll be next week. So if you enjoyed this content, definitely leave me a like down below. Hit me up with a comment down below. Do you think that taking time to do rock molds like this with plaster is worth it? It's definitely fiddly. It can be frustrating at times. Maybe this is all you need. I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts. If you have not yet, subscribe to the channel. That goes a long way to helping us out. And hit the notification bell if you want to know when our videos go live every week, which is Thursday Eastern Standard Time at noon. But that's going to be it for this week. I'm definitely excited for next week when we get this thing really looking table ready. So until then, I'll be seeing you.